Yo, what up? Welcome to Feedback Friday. Today's video is brought to us by Weston Zimmerman. Shot a wedding video on a GH5, a 12 to 60 millimeter, and a Zoom crane with a Phantom 4 Pro. This is his first wedding ever, so we are going to check it out. Like the title, some good introductory B-roll shots. Very pretty shot there. Like the movement, looks clean. It's a lot of space up here, a lot of headroom. We talk about this in video 3.1 composition. We're cutting off the feet here, which isn't a problem as long as we don't have half the frame here with emptiness. So I would have personally tilted that down just a little bit. Now with the crane, that's one of the disadvantages to using a motorized gimbal, is it's a little bit harder to control the exact tilts and angles of everything on the fly. So, either you would have to get lower or you'd have to tilt it down. Either way, we have a little bit too much headroom here, in my opinion. Pretty composition. I like that shot. Very nice. I'm not sure what is happening here, but it looks like you lowered the frame rate past 24. I would advise not doing that. I'm assuming you shot that at 24 frames and then tried to slow it down, and that's what's given it that jittery look. So unless you're shooting more than 24 frames, I advise not to slow down the footage, or else you get that look there. Pretty slow-mo, love it. Super pretty location. Now the music's kind of slow for speed ramps. There's nothing wrong with speed ramps like this. With how slow the music is, to me it's a little bit distracting seeing fast moving footage or fast moving cuts with music that's kind of slower paced like this. That's just personal preference. And it's okay having some speed ramps, especially at music changes, where you have a hit of the music. That makes a little more sense. But just randomly throughout the song, having speed ramps here and there with slow music seems a little bit off. Like the reveal behind the pillar here. I don't know if you had some restrictions on what you could film, but this shot to me cuts a little bit too soon. We just barely start to see the bride and groom in the very left of the screen, and then it cuts, and they're walking away. So I probably would have spent a little bit more time showing some shots. I mean, everything, all this footage is leading up to that one moment. That's the climax. That should be the climax of the video, is them making these vows, making this commitment to each other. and we only have one shot of them, and you barely see them in the left of your screen. And you should spend, I would say, at least 10 to 15 seconds of them up there, you know, making that commitment to each other. And we had about 1.5 seconds out of the left of the screen showing that part. So I'd emphasize that part, that climax, a little bit more. That goes into storytelling, guys. Is, you know, what's this video about? What are we trying to make people feel? We want them to feel emotion. I would think that the most emotion could be captured in that moment. Obviously, if you have audio of that, that would be able to create even more emotion of them promising their vows to each other. Some churches don't allow that, so that's fine if that was the case. But if you were able to get these shots, I'm assuming you were able to at least get some shots of them making those vows. So I would have included a little more of that part. A little vertigo effect there, very nice. It's like we're on to the reception now. Some good establishing shots, showing locations, some details. I like it. The zoom transition to me is something I use on more playful edits. And not there's anything wrong with that. It's a more playful transition. Some people do use a lot of this stuff in weddings, and that's just personal preference. So it's not right or wrong. I just think if the music was more playful, I could see using those. I have used them in weddings as well on more playful music. But with to me, just the pacing, it just seems a little bit weird seeing a fast moving transition in a very slow paced song. So that's all I'm trying to say there. Again, nothing wrong with it, just personal preference, matching speed of the music with the speed of the footage. All right, color balance is looking a little off here. Exposure as well, looks like we have some blown out highlights here on their clothes, and they're looking a bit green and warm here, so just careful on exposure and white balance. Again, bit intense editing. I mean, the song is picking up now, but the flashing screen seems a bit intense for me for a wedding. Just personal preference. Nothing right or wrong, creative differences. Well, I liked that last shot. I would have held that shot a little longer. Very nice. Overall, Weston, amazing job for your first wedding. Much better than my first wedding. You're on a definite awesome fast track to success. Main takeaways for you. Watch framing. We talked about framing here and there with the Crane 2. That's something that can be a little more difficult with motorized gimbals. Just one of the drawbacks, a little bit harder to frame exactly how you want. The GH5 doesn't do great in low light, so I might recommend investing in a prime lens that would allow you to stop down more and get a more shallow depth of field, one, but then two, less grain in your image as you're letting in more light. And probably the biggest thing would just be storytelling, making sure that the climax of that video is them actually getting married and helping your viewer feel emotionally connected to that edit. Overall, I thought it was a great edit. I just think the climax was a little bit sparse in helping us feel connected to that wedding commitment they make. But that's it, guys. Hopefully that's helpful for you and for Weston. If you guys have any further questions for us, please let us know. Welcome everybody to Feedback Friday numero 6. Today we're going to be taking a look at a wedding video shot by our friend Matt Hutchinson. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in and start watching. Okay, so right off the bat, Matt, what I'm gonna say is content is king. It's all about what you're actually shooting, and you have about 15 to 20 seconds to capture the attention of your viewer and keep them around for the full 2, 3, 4 minutes. Now, I liked your first two shots. You showed the dress hanging up in the room, the little dresses of the girls. Instead of cutting now to shots of dogs, which aren't very relevant to their wedding, a wedding is between the bride and the groom, so they should be the two highlights. So they should be the first two subjects that you're seeing in the video, not the dogs. So that would be my first piece of advice, is to open this a little bit stronger. I wouldn't have been showing shots of the dogs quite yet, or maybe never. Now we have a shot of the girl doing her hair. A shot of the bride should definitely be coming before shots of dogs.
Cross an empty land. I knew the pathway like the back of my hand. I felt the earth beneath my feet. Sat by the river.
Again, these are cute shots of the sister or whoever this is, this little girl, but this isn't the focus of the day quite yet. This might be something you throw in maybe one shot, but definitely not two shots with different angles of her being fed, because that's not the point of the video here. We still haven't been introduced to the groom yet, and I would say personally, definitely we would want shots of the groom coming before dogs and before other family members.
And it made me complete. Oh, simple thing, where have you gone?
So that's 4 shots in a row of the little girl. Cute shots, not taken away from them, but not the focus of the wedding video.
Getting tired and I need someone to rely on. I came across.
So her leaving the house happens at 55 seconds into the video. If I were making this, that would happen at about 20, maybe 25 seconds into the video. I would make all of that happen a lot quicker. Her getting ready, that's not the highlight of the video, and that took a full minute. So I would say condense that, cut out the shots of the dog, cut out a lot of the shots of the little girl, maybe one of the shots of the little girl. But let's focus on what this is about, her prepping for her wedding day, and let's get her out of the door quicker.
A fallen tree, I felt the branches of it.
Good glide cam shots, looking solid. Now at 1:03 is the first time we're introduced to the groom, and he should be introduced much earlier. Within the first 10 to 20 seconds of the video, we should see him. So you may not have had good access to him, but in the future you need to try to gain access to him, because it's very crucial to the video to be able to get a few setting up shots of the groom as well, and introducing him earlier on in the video, so the first time you see him isn't when they're actually getting married. Now, shots like this, again, this is a cutaway shot of a bike. I as a viewer, I don't understand what the relevance is of it. And so maybe a shot like that wouldn't be best to go in at all, unless somehow you're tying in and helping the viewer understand what the significance of that bike is. But just a random shot of a bike isn't super effective unless the audience can understand what important. A little bit higher difficulty level, but you'll notice that the background is in focus and the foreground, your subjects, are equally in focus as the background. And so it's a little bit harder to focus in on what you're supposed to be looking at, especially when you have a big gap of background like this in the center of the image. It's harder for the viewer to stay focused on what they're supposed to be, which is the subject. So my guess is your aperture was somewhere between 10 and 20 on this shot. I would knock that down lower, 2.8 to 5.6, so that you have some depth of field and can get some separation between background and subject to help them pop a little more. That is going to be more difficult though, because then you're going to have to be pulling focus, but if you can get good at that and practice getting that focus down, it's going to make those shots look more cinematic and going to give you that depth of field that allows you to focus better on your subject.
Be the end of everything. So why don't we go somewhere only we know? Somewhere only we know.
Now, I'd like to see your timeline, Matt, to see what frames per second you shot in and what frame per second you edited in, but I'm noticing that the footage is a bit jumpy, and I'm not sure exactly why that is, and so maybe you could provide for me the information of, your timeline, what it looked like. But on a shot like this just comes with practice, but I would try and make it one clean fluid movement. On this, you'll notice that you kind of go left, and then you kind of come back right, and then you're down low, and then you're up high. So you make kind of 3 or 4 different movements within that one glide cam take. Me personally, when I try and make a cinematic shot, I try and get one fluid movement. So a right to left, maybe a right to left with a tilt down, and then cut to a different shot. And that way you're not getting a lot of disorienting movement up and downs. That is a little bit distraction to the viewer in my opinion, and so I always try and make one fluid movement and then cut to a new angle. And I think we linger a little bit too long on this part with them kissing. I would have cut a little bit sooner there. Looks like they're kissing for about 3 or 4 seconds max on that. It starts to get a little bit awkward. They're kind of lingering, sitting there. So I would cut that a little bit sooner there. Again, cute shots of the kid, but not as relevant to the wedding day. Maybe one shot of the kid as a cutaway to fill in the gaps and give you an idea of who was there, but focusing 10 seconds, 3 or 4 shots on a separate character usually doesn't add to the wedding video unless they're playing an integral part of the wedding, and this kid's just playing with an umbrella, which doesn't really play a big part in the wedding. So quick cut to him and get back to the action. Good detail shot. If I were you, Matt, I would use a tighter focal length for detail shots like this. It looks like you're shooting on a wider focal length, like 16 to 20 millimeter. And what that does is it gives you a lot of background. You're seeing all these branches over here. You're seeing her arm. You don't care about that part of the image. We care about the flowers in this shot. So zoom in to 35 millimeter or 50 millimeter, and let's focus in on just what we want to look at. Also, let's create some depth of field, bring our aperture down, put the background out of focus, and that will give us more focus on what you want to focus on. Now, in the focal length video, I talk about different focal lengths being flattering on the face. We're starting to get pretty close up on some of these face shots here. And yes, it's easier to glide cam at wider focal lengths, but when working with people, it's important to get good at glide camming at tighter focal lengths, because when you're getting this close to people, it's going to be kind of unflattering and distorting and pulling their features and giving you a less flattering look on the faces. So if you're going to be getting this close to your subject, right now you're about 3 to 5 feet away from your subjects. That's too close to be shooting at wide angles. So make sure you zoom in to a tighter focal length when we start to get those close-ups of the human. guys, is this is documentary style filming where you want to run that camera as often as possible because you never know when you're going to capture one of those moments that's very genuine and very candid, and you can't always force that kind of stuff. So keep the camera rolling, and when you're editing, look for those moments that are more exciting, more entertaining than just people standing there. Look for some kind of smiles, laughter, people messing around, having a good time. Anything that's out of the ordinary that isn't just people sitting there, looking at the camera, to help add some movement and emotion to the film. Again, especially on these types of shots where we're doing close-ups on people's faces, the background is just as in focus, if not probably more in focus than our subjects here, who are looking a little bit out of focus because they're kind of close to your camera. So that was one of the biggest things I'd say, Matt, that I'd improve on this video, is finding those focus points. And what I do is, and especially with the DSLR, it's pretty easy. So you pick the point where the focus of your shot is going to be. So right here will be the focus of this shot. I would get this close to him and I'd say, all right, grab focus, and then I'd start the shot so that I know the focus is set for the most important part of my shot. Do that before every shot. Make sure your focus is set and don't just rely on infinity focus and hope that everything's in focus. Practice bumping that aperture down and finding the right focus for every shot. Fun little animation at the end. Well done. Good ending shot. Solid work, Matt. I forgot to mention that this is Matt's first wedding video ever. So given that fact, I thought he did a tremendous job. It was better than my first wedding video that I ever shot. So awesome job, Matt. Definitely a lot of room for improvement, but there should be a lot of room since it is your first film. Matt asked me, how much do you think I could charge for a video like that, as he did this one free for his first video? And I said, I believe you could charge $300 to $500 for a wedding video like that. And obviously the more you do, Matt, the more you're going to improve, and the prices will go up as the demand goes up, as you start putting out better and better content. So yeah, main things to work on: content. Let's focus in on what we're supposed to be focusing in on, is the wedding day and the couple. I'd like to know what frame rates you were shooting at so we can help improve on that. That's one of the biggest things I see some of you guys struggling with, is not understanding frame rates and how to use them correctly, and then using a shallow depth of field and practicing getting those crisp focuses on your subject. But overall, great job, Matt. Amazing job for a first wedding video. So keep it up. If you guys have any further questions, please let me know. Yo, and welcome to Feedback Friday. Today's video is brought to us by Kanoa Utler. Kanoa shot a wedding video with 3 iPhones. There were 3 of us shooting this, and a Sony a6500, Sony a6300, 2 Comer lights, 1 standard Phantom 3 drone. It's a Snapchat and Insta story themed wedding, so all the shots were taken accordingly. Very interesting. Let's check this out.